Hello and welcome to Secrets of Organ Playing podcast.
This is a show dedicated to helping you become a better organist.
We're your hosts, Vidas Pinkevičius
And Aušra Motuzaitė Pinkevičienė.
We have over 25 years of experience of playing the organ.
And we've been teaching thousands of organists online from 89 countries since 2011.
So now let's jump in and get started with the podcast for today.
We hope you'll enjoy it.
Hi guys, this is Vidas.
And Aušra.
Let's start episode 714. This question was sent by Kathrin and she writes, when I write fingering in the score, partly it doesn't work anymore when I play the piece faster. In some pieces it is necessary to play one or two or more notes in the first line in the left hand or vice versa. So both hands have to work together. I can only write fingerings for both hands together. How to study pieces with chords like in the French Romantic, for instance, and with more than one note in every hand. Kind regards, Kathrin. So if I understand correctly, if you have a passage of single melodic line in each hand, then for Kathrin it's easy to write in fingerings. But if you have more than one voice in each hand, then she has trouble to figuring out fingerings, correct?
What I understood from this letter is that she has trouble when left hand has to play some notes from the upper staff.
Yeah, let's discuss both instances. This migrating voice between this middle voice which migrates between hands, and also an instance of two voices in each hand.
Because if you have only one voice in one hand, then it's not a problem. You can write down fingers right away. But if you have, let's say, middle voice which is shared for both hands, yes, first of all you have to know which hand is playing which note. And you have to make markings in your score. And only then to write the fingering down.
Yeah, exactly. Not entire piece will be, written this way. Some passages will treat the middle voice for the right hand, and some passages will treat the middle voice for the left hand. So isolate those passages, and then write in fingering separately for those passages, not linearly from the beginning until the end, the right hand part, right? It's more difficult this way. But in episodes when the migrating voice starts to migrate to another hand, then you stop and then you complete the fingering for the previous passage.
Yes, and another thing is that if you have in chords, then I don't see what is the problem for you with the fingering, because if you, let's say, playing French Romantic music, as Kathrin mentions here in the question, then you need to use a lot of finger substitutions. And if texture is really thick, then what is the problem? You have only 5 fingers in one hand and 5 fingers in another hand. And if you have full chord, then you have very limited options what to use. Usually, in the right hand, for example, you often substitute the 5th finger with the 4th finger, and it can last pages and pages long, this substitution.
If you, for example, play a passage in ascending motion and you need to play it legato, so as Aušra says, you have to substitute the upper voice, substitute fingers 4 to 5, 4 to 5, 4 to 5 in order to have space for the next note. But when going downwards, if you have legato passage, then 5 to 4, 5 to 4 on top, right, on the top note. And the same is for the left hand part. Outer notes bottom notes of the left hand and upper notes of the right hand will be most important to keep it legato, because
Yes,
they are the best heard. They have the outer voices are most easily heard.
yes, and for me, for example, the hardest thing when playing French romantic music is, to shorten by half the repeated notes in the inner voices, which is a really tricky part to do in a fixed texture, but you have to do it.
Yeah, Osha is referring to this technique of French romantic and symphonic music, legato technique basically, but it has uh, special places where you don't play legato, like repeated notes. And in those instances, we don't just play repeated notes, not legato, but we actually very carefully um, shorten the notes exactly in half. Sometimes not in half, but in a third. It depends on the smallest unit value, rhythmical value of the piece. Let's say if the smallest, most often used rhythmical value in the piece is 8 note, so you shortened this repeated note by an 8 note. That was the method that Marcel Dupré taught. But if it's a triple meter, for example, 6/8, and there is a dotted note somewhere, so you cannot really shorten it in half. So you still look what is the smallest unit value, smallest rhythmical value of the piece, and then shorten it by that rhythmic value. Most often it will be 8 note. For faster passages, it could be 16th note in also.
Another thing, my advice to Kathrin would be, don't be hasty in writing fingering down. My advice would be sight read through the piece a few times, and only then, write the fingering down. And do it while sitting on the keyboard, that you could check if that really works. That way, you would not work in vain, and you would not have, to write your fingers down again. Because, if you wrote the fingers down and when you played it, it did not work, it means that, you chose the fingering wrong.
Probably because theoretically in your head it looked fine, but when you tried it out, it didn't work anymore.
And anatomically, we are all a little bit different. Of course, similar at the same time, but a little bit different. So what works for one person might not work for another one.
Some people have smaller hands, right? Some fingers, smaller fingers. Some people have second finger longer than the fourth finger, right? It also influences the choice of fingerings sometimes. There are some general ideas about fingerings which work for everyone, but then there are some nuances which depend on physicality of each person.
The same, with the pedaling. For example, comparing me when I was, 20 years old and comparing me now, I use completely different pedaling than what I used, many years ago. Because, joints are getting old, and when you have, to sort of to be gentle for yourself, not to overstretch too much.
And when we get questions like this from people, sometimes I have a feeling that organists try to play more difficult music than they are currently able to do. So that's why writing in fingering or figuring out fingering is very challenging for people like this, because they want to play I don't know, toccatas and very advanced pieces too soon, right? Without having played intermediate stuff, right? Without having played even basic stuff. So for Kathrin, I would suggest probably choosing French romantic music, but easier versets, not symphony movements, let's say, right? It doesn't have to be a famous piece of music, because if it's a famous piece, a lot of times it will be difficult, and vice versa. If it's difficult, we have a chance to have heard it. So I suggest maybe like Leon Böhlmann's versets, right? Or even pieces by César Franck, but from L'Organiste collection at first, right? And do it a few months, and then progress to another level. Do it then a little bit more difficult music for a while, for a few months also. There are stages of your advancement, and I don't think it's a good idea to skip all those stages.
Yes, good results takes time. And I think, that a good organist is, patience and time. Without those two, you cannot succeed.
And if you don't have patience, you can always look at our suggestions from Secrets of Organ Playing store. We have hundreds and hundreds of scores written in fingering and pedaling for you to save time. So, hope this was helpful to Kathrin and others who are having similar fingering problems. Please let us know what you think, if you have any other questions and requests. And remember, when you practice,
Miracles happen.
this podcast is supported by Total Organist, the most comprehensive organ training program online.
It has hundreds of courses, coaching, and practice materials for every area of organ playing, thousands of instructional videos and PDFs. You will not find more value anywhere else online.
Total Organist helps you to master any piece, perfect your technique, develop your sight reading skills, improvise or compose your own music, and much, much more.
Sign up and begin your training today at organduo.lt and click on Total Organist. And of course, you will get the first month free too. You can cancel anytime.
If you like our organ music, you can also support us on Buy Me a Coffee platform.
Find out more at buymeacoffee.com/organduo.